Something enormous has just surfaced. A new internal leak from the Qatar Grand Prix exposes exactly how Oscar Piastri lost a victory he had secured through pace, control, and absolute mastery of the MCL39. What these files show is not a mistake. It is a collapse that unfolded in real time and left Piastri powerless as the race slipped away in front of him. The leaked material reveals the precise moment when the McLaren pit wall froze during the lap 7 safety car, allowing Max Verstappen to execute the only strategy that could put him back into the World Championship. These images and logs show hesitation, miscommunication, and a decision that destroyed the lead Piastri had built with clinical execution. It becomes even more shocking when you realize that Piastri was driving the fastest car on the circuit, setting low 1 minute 24 laps with confidence and maintaining full tire control while Verstappen struggled with bouncing and rotation. The victory was his to claim. The championship momentum was his to seize. Yet he never saw the danger, because the danger came from his own pit wall. Before we dive into the leaked footage and the FIA's reaction to what many analysts are calling the most costly strategic collapse of the decade, make sure you subscribe right now. The championship will be decided in one race, and everything is on the line. Oscar Piastri began the Qatar Grand Prix from pole position with a level of authority that immediately confirmed the MCL39 as the fastest car on the track. When the lights went out, he launched perfectly and built a gap over Lando Norris with the precision of a driver who understood that he controlled not just the race but the championship narrative. His rhythm in the early laps was exceptional. He delivered a series of low 1 minute 24 times while protecting the tires within the limits imposed by the FIA. The McLaren's aerodynamic stability through the fast second and third sectors gave him a level of confidence that neither Verstappen nor Norris could match. The superiority of the McLaren package in this phase of the race left Red Bull with no response. Verstappen struggled with mechanical bouncing and rotation issues that prevented him from committing through the high-speed corners. Even so, he maintained third place only because Piastri's lead was so strong that his pace did not need to increase. Everything about the rhythm of the opening laps pointed to a dominant Piastri victory. There was no visible weakness in his driving, no tire management issue threatening his pace, and no sign that any rival could disrupt his control. The turning point of the entire championship arrived on lap 7 when Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly collided, triggering a safety car. This was the moment the leaked files now illuminate in detail. As the field slowed, the Red Bull pit wall reacted instantly and prepared Verstappen to pit for a new set of tires, allowing him to remove one mandatory stint at minimal cost. Meanwhile, the McLaren garage hesitated. Engineers looked at their screens, exchanged glances, and failed to initiate the pit stop sequence. The images show the pit lane crew standing by without instructions as the field compressed behind the safety car. When Piastri asked his engineer about the strategy under caution, the response was clear but deeply misguided. They would stay out to maintain track position. This decision, taken in real time without matching the actions of their rivals, condemned Piastri to complete multiple stops at full racing speed. When Verstappen exited the pits, he inserted himself into the part of the race where tire load, pace stability, and stint count aligned perfectly for him. The mathematics shifted instantly and decisively. Once the safety car ended, Piastri was trapped in a scenario that no amount of pace could save. His tires had cooled below the ideal window and required careful regeneration, while Verstappen's fresh set offered perfect grip and immediate stability. The tire rule allowed Verstappen to make up enormous ground simply by avoiding degradation. Piastri pushed hard, using every advantage of the MCL39, but he could not build the 25-second gap needed to return from his mandatory stop in the lead. When he finally entered the pits later in the race, he emerged far behind Verstappen. The radio messages after the stop captured the emotional toll of the miscalculation. Piastri reset his focus, but when he saw Verstappen crossing the main straight ahead with the race entirely under control, he expressed a simple, painful truth. He said he had no words. His engineer acknowledged the mistake, reminding him to keep his head down. That short exchange has now become symbolic of a deeper issue, one that the FIA is now reviewing because the leaked images provide a clear timeline of hesitation and miscommunication during the most critical phase of the race. The World Championship standings after Qatar reveal the true cost. Lando Norris remains in the lead with 408 points. Max Verstappen sits 12 points behind with 396. Oscar Piastri follows with 392. Piastri's second place keeps him mathematically alive, but his path to the title now requires a victory in Abu Dhabi and a collapse from both rivals. Qatar was not a normal defeat. It was a structural collapse, shaped by hesitation on the pit wall while the driver delivered one of the finest performances of his season. Oscar Piastri entered the Qatar Grand Prix with complete technical control over his McLaren MCL39, a car that responded instantly to every steering input and held extraordinary stability through the high-speed sectors. The opening phase of the race demonstrated how well he had internalized the demands of the circuit. Each lap reflected a driver fully connected to the mechanical and aerodynamic rhythm beneath him. Yet the deeper problem began forming the moment the safety car was deployed. The leadership he had built depended on maintaining forward momentum and continuous thermal management. The sudden slowdown disrupted the delicate balance that had elevated him above his rivals and placed him at the mercy of strategic decisions made outside the cockpit. The safety car introduced an entirely new set of variables that required rapid engineering interpretation. Piastri needed a clear and decisive instruction that matched the tire regulation for Qatar. The rule demanding multiple stints meant that the optimal strategy hinged on eliminating a mandatory stop while the field was compressed. Red Bull recognized this instantly. McLaren did not. The problem therefore was not the pace of the car or the mindset of the driver, but a sudden break in alignment between what the situation demanded and how the pit wall responded. Piastri sensed the shift but could not act independently, knowing the broader picture depended on the information held by the team. Inside the cockpit he maintained his composure, preserving tire temperature and preparing for a restart that would require precision. What he could not see was the hesitation unfolding behind the pit wall. Engineers evaluated pace projections, tire wear forecasts, and the behavior of rivals, but the window for action was narrowing by the second. The leaked evidence reveals that they saw Verstappen pull into the pit lane yet did not trigger their own stop. This indecision introduced a structural flaw into Piastri's race. The MCL39 remained the strongest car on track, yet strength alone cannot overcome the mathematical implications of a missed safety car stop. When the safety car period ended, the true nature of the problem became visible. Piastri's tires had cycled through a cooling phase that demanded careful regeneration, while Verstappen rejoined with a fresh compound ready for immediate exploitation. The advantage Piastri had built through outright pace was erased. More importantly, the battle had shifted from a contest of speed to a contest of timing. The problem facing Piastri was now rooted in the rules themselves. He needed to complete mandatory stints while Verstappen had already satisfied one of his. The deficit this created would grow with every lap, no matter how well he drove. From that moment the race expectations reversed. Piastri no longer held control over his destiny. His engineer began advising on tire temperatures and target deltas, but the tone subtly changed from offensive to defensive. The underlying issue was no longer about performance. It was about the cost of the choice made behind the safety car. Even as Piastri delivered consistent laps, the World Championship slipped further from his hands. The problem had transformed from a single missed opportunity into a structural deficit that shaped every strategic decision thereafter. The most difficult element for Piastri was that he had executed every part of his job flawlessly. He perfected the start. He controlled the pace. He protected the tires. Yet he was now working within a framework that had left him without any strategic leverage. The radio messages following the restart reflect a driver trying to rebuild momentum despite knowing the advantage had tilted sharply in Verstappen's favor. He did not express frustration in his tone, but the silence between his questions revealed how clearly he understood the consequences. He knew that every second lost during the safety car would echo through the remainder of the race. The problem concluded with a simple but devastating truth. When Piastri finally made his mandatory stop, the structural consequences of the earlier hesitation became undeniable. Verstappen passed the pit exit with a margin that Piastri's pace could not overturn. In that instant the race, once firmly under his control, shifted beyond reach. The issue was not misfortune or mechanical failure. It was the cost of hesitation at the exact moment when certainty was required. The FIA now examines the evidence because the problem was not isolated. It was systemic, and it shaped both the outcome of the race and the World Championship heading into the final showdown. The engineering challenge at McLaren intensified the moment the field compressed behind the safety car because the MCL39 had been calibrated for uninterrupted aerodynamic flow and stable tire temperatures. Piastri had built his advantage through rhythm and consistency, two conditions that vanished instantly once the speed dropped. As the car circulated at reduced pace, the aero platform lost part of its energetic load and the tires began cooling at a rate the engineers had not anticipated during the first stint. The team needed to respond with immediate strategic clarity, but the data flow during this phase showed fragmented internal communication, a clear indicator that the pit wall was struggling to realign its projections with the new reality. The tire behavior itself added urgency. The left side tires in Qatar endure heavier load due to the number of long right-handed corners, and when their temperature drops below the optimal range, the compound becomes less pliable and loses mechanical grip. The engineering group could see the decline in temperature through the telemetry, yet they attempted to manage the issue through instructions rather than a reset via a pit stop. The Red Bull crew by contrast executed a tire reset and instantly regained control over the thermal window. This singular difference in engineering response during the safety car created a long-term performance divergence that the McLaren group could not reverse. Support systems within the car also played a role in magnifying the situation. The hybrid unit relies on predictable harvesting conditions to maintain energy balance, but under the safety car, harvesting becomes inconsistent. If Piastri attempted to recharge aggressively, he would worsen tire cooling, and if he prioritized tire temperature, he would begin the restart with a compromised energy system. The engineering team faced a multi-layered trade-off, but with Verstappen having already reset his tires and energy profile, McLaren had placed its lead driver into a position where every option was inferior to the scenario their rival now enjoyed. As the safety car continued, McLaren ran simulations on evolving track gaps and projected stint lengths. The leaked material suggests that the models indicated a narrowing window to perform a no-cost stop, yet the team did not mobilize quickly enough to take advantage of it. By the time they aligned internally on the potential benefits of pitting, Verstappen had already completed his stop and the compressed field had advanced to a point where Piastri would lose all track position. In elite motorsport, hesitation measured in seconds can erase advantages built over an entire weekend, and the Qatar data now demonstrates exactly how that unfolded. Once the race restarted, the engineering group had to shift its focus toward damage limitation. The thermal recovery of Piastri's tires required a very specific approach, combining gentle lateral load with progressive acceleration. The team guided him through the regeneration phase, but the numbers revealed that the compound had already passed through a cooling cycle that reduced its peak potential. Piastri still produced competitive laps, yet his tires were now operating below the ceiling achieved prior to the safety car. By contrast, Verstappen ran at full operating temperature from the first green flag lap, allowing him to preserve his advantage with less degradation. The timing of Piastri's mandatory stop introduced a final engineering dilemma. They attempted to minimize the deficit by analyzing undercut windows, tire degradation patterns ahead, and fuel-adjusted pace. Yet the projections consistently indicated the same conclusion. Piastri would rejoin the circuit behind Verstappen, regardless of the precision of his laps or the mechanical stability of the MCL39. This meant that engineering excellence could optimize the remainder of the race, but it could not reverse the structural consequence of the decision taken during the safety car.